All right, so we're gonna be recording the second half of 2 weeks ago's workshop, which was how to present your research. But before we get into that, just a few updates. So we mentioned this briefly earlier, but you should be receiving a last wave of forms to submit in order to receive your payment. And then you should be having your meeting 3 with your peer mentor this upcoming week. And if you missed any workshops, you should watch them, take notes in your planning guide, as well as taking notes on this particular presentation in your planning guide. And we'll be going over that with you during the meeting 3, just to make sure that you watch it in its entirety and don't have any questions. And then we will be having our next workshop Friday, August 6th, which will discuss the college process, and then a final workshop also in August that will go over just a feedback meeting for this program.
All right, so today's presentation is on presenting your research. So as you know, in August, you guys will be having about 5 to 10 minutes to present your research to your friends, your family, the faculty. And so you might need to know the basics in order to get your poster ready to present. So what is a poster? It is a concise, visually pleasing illustration of your research intended to catch attention as audiences come and go. So posters can be used at science fairs, symposiums, gatherings, and it's just a way for people to see all the hard work you've done on one nicely organized sheet of paper. So when you are making your poster, there's a few things you need to keep in mind. The first thing is you should know who you're presenting to. Understand your audience, because this can help you not only put important information in your poster, but it'll also help you present to them as well. Understand draft organization as well. This will refer to the layout and content of your presentation. Again, it will go hand in hand with your audience. And the format. So what should a research poster look like? How should it be laid out? All of this will be talked about in later slides. So the goals of presenting in general is to have your poster easy and attractive to read. It should not be cluttered. It shouldn't be hard on the eyes, etc. Also, you want to narrate your experience of your summer research using the layout of your poster and public speaking skills. You want to make sure that you are reading top to bottom, left to right, starting from the beginning, and having the reader understand in a clear, linear manner what you've been doing from, your question all the way down to your scientific results. And the last aspect, the last goal, is to maximize insight transferred to attendees. Your poster is probably limited in space, but if you get all the necessary information onto your poster, your audience will know exactly what you've been doing in the least amount of space, I guess, is possible. All right, so kind of talking more about the limited space on the poster and then maximizing the impact it has on your audience. It's good to prioritize the essentials. So really focus on what your hypothesis was, your results, the methodology, and then you can add some little graphs, maybe play around with the layout of your poster, make it, if you can, space it out a little bit. And so keeping this diagram in mind, need to know, it should be the foundation, and then working up to the nice to know, the little details that matter. And remember, your audience has a blank slate, so start from the ground up. Really think about what your audience does know and what they don't know, and go from there.
All right, so now that you have an idea of sort of the overarching goal of what your poster is and what it should be doing, I'm gonna walk you through the different sections of a poster. And so more specifically, what we're gonna be looking for in terms of requirements. So this is just a general, very basic poster presentation layout. So if you see at the top, in the biggest font, you have your poster title, which would be your research question. And then followed that with a smaller font, you typically list anyone that worked on the project with you and all other affiliations, so institutions, contact information, etc. And this format is, like I said, very basic. And once you start to do these multiple times, you'll be able to customize it. But a general look for this would be having your abstract. A quick note for that, not all symposiums require abstracts. We will be, for the sake of our presentation symposium, so you are going to have to learn how to write an abstract, which we'll go over more in detail. Usually that's at the top. You have your intro, your methods, results, accompanied by figures, and then discussion of the results, and then any references or acknowledgements that you want to mention. Again, we'll go over what each of these will look like in detail in these next slides. So the required sections would be titles, authors, institution, introduction, abstract, methods, results, conclusions. Now, optionally, you can add some other parts to your poster if you feel is necessary. So this can be future directions, references, so if you used any literature or similar studies that you wanted to note in your presentation, contact information, and then so that the person could, relay any additional questions to you. And then some people, this is more of a new thing, but adding a QR code to your presentation if you want to link to something else. So it could either be a more in-depth presentation, recording, it could be the PowerPoint slides, it could be just how the layout looks so that people could read everything again exactly how you had it. This is optional, but if you wanted to add something for your audience to take away, that's always appreciated. So now looking closer at the specific areas. So your title, you need it to be short and concise. It should really just state the main purpose of your study. Usually this is done via the question of your study. It should have the largest font like we saw earlier where the audience, as they're walking by and looking for posters that they want to, hear more about, you need to make it so that your title attracts people, and it should sort of pin down the main focus of your presentation and capture the attention of your audience so that more people will come to you. Authors and affiliations, you obviously need to include first and last names. You should be sure to include what department they work at. So if they're at Temple, specifying, are they in the Department of Physics, Biology, Chemistry, etc. You can have the Temple University logo. That's always a nice way to add to your poster. Any other photos, I would refrain from including photos of yourself or any of your mentors. It just doesn't look as great and can clutter your presentation. And as you'll see when we talk about accessibility, that's not good. But having any small logo can look nice. And so you want to be cognizant that everyone gets listed. Typically you do this from the person who contributed the most all the way to the least. And then the last person is usually the senior principal investigator. So that's whose lab it's attached to. And it's really similar to how you'd write authors in a manuscript or publication. So for your introduction, this will be in the section, the first section. So you want to think how a poster reads. It's from left to right, or it's up, down, left to right, right? So your introduction is going to be all the way at your top left. And so this one's you should be able to provide context and the background of your research, including specific goals and even the hypothesis of your study. And you really want to sort of hone down on the value of your work and why you picked it. So here you can include any literature studies that you found, you know, and just giving general context. And as Hajar mentioned earlier, knowing your audience is really important because this will sort of determine what language you use. And so for our case, we're going to have your parents, other students that are working in different labs, and we're going to have mixed disciplines, so people that did physics research, organic chemistry research, bio, all in one symposium. So you really, really want to oversimplify your introduction and just keep to the basics. And it should frame the rest of your poster. So methods. Methods is pretty straightforward. It should be concise, as should all the other sections, and it should be able to justify your rationale for choosing the methods to answer your study. So you should be able to show, did you do a literature review, but even more so, how did you select what papers to include? If you did data, how did you collect the data? How did you, go about your entire study? And things that usually help are any visual aids. So think graphs, flowcharts are usually really common in a methods section so that people could see sort of the subsequent steps that you did to receive your results. And then the next section will be results. So you definitely want to include some sort of visualization, so figures, tables that summarize your main results. Now, you're probably going to find a lot of different conclusions and results all within your study. And it's really, really important that you only focus and include the results that relate back to your main question. And so you should always have that question in mind. Like nothing that you include on this poster should deviate from your bigger picture. And so just some, I guess, format things. Your figures should be large. The second thing that people tend to get are attracted to in posters are large figures. People should be able to understand the graphs and figures that you have on there without even reading your study. And they should be able to understand what you're trying to portray. So it's really important that they're labeled properly, colorful, easily understandable, and large. And then for your conclusion, this should just highlight the key findings of your study and how they relate to your question. So did you answer them? What was the statistical significance, etc.? And then sort of summarize what was in the results. And then if you do have next steps in the research process, or even if there was any gaps in your research that you think warrant another study, which most people will, it's a good place to sort of highlight those in the sections, and talking about maybe what could be done now that you have these preliminary results, what another study could come out of it. So relating back to the audience, your whole goal of this presentation is to articulate what you did in your research, why you did it, and how you did it. And it should be attractive and concise so that people want to learn and read more about it. Now, it's going to be a lot harder for people to get that if they don't understand what you're saying. So we kind of keep reinforcing this, but you should really simplify your language and make sure that it's interpreted by most people. And so here's just an example of something that I found online. So we how to basically simplify your writing. So say you're in your results section, you wrote, we found consistent differential validity for some non-cognitive measures for predicting international student GPA, specifically with SJT, continuous learning, social responsibility, and perseverance. Now, that's a lot, that's a mouthful. That's going to be really hard for someone who doesn't really understand what what you're researching to grasp. And so if you were to simplify this and take up less space, an alternative could be saying, for international students, perseverance and a sense of social responsibility are extra important for predicting first year GPA. So, there's going to be rewording that needs to be done. And a good suggestion is to have someone that isn't experienced to look over your writing and see if they can understand it based on how you wrote it. So next, we're going to talk about poster design. So now that you know what sections are in there, you should prioritize the writing of those sections first, and then you start thinking about the layout and how everything else is going to fit together. But here are just some, I guess, pointers and advice for how to put this together. So when you organize your poster, I would say first write everything down, and then go back and sort of revise that writing. So you want to make sure that you don't have any run-on or lengthy sentences, you don't have unnecessary filler words, and that if there are any like complex words or vocabulary that are specific to your discipline, you substitute them out for things that normal people can understand. Figures are really important in a poster presentation, more so than the writing itself. And so you should try to incorporate as many as possible as you can. Don't overflood or include anything just for the sake of including it, but try to summarize your results in different tables. And so your poster should really narrate a story. And so it should be logical. You want to start usually with talking about yourself, why you did your research, how you did it, what the relevancy was, etc., and then work from there. And so I mentioned this earlier, but your poster reads top, bottom, left to right, and typically people have 3 columns. And so they kind of block off the sections that way. Here's just another way of how your poster board should read. So you want to start here, end here. You'll start with looking at the title, then affiliations, then the abstract, introduction, methods, results, data tables here, conclusions, and then if you include any references or acknowledgements, would also go all the way at the end. So next is design and accessibility. So it's important to think that when you're in a symposium, I don't want to say competing, but you're going to be in a symposium filled with other poster boards. And so it's not logical, or it's not likely that anyone's going to be able to sit and read through every single one. For ours, it's a little bit different because it's exclusive to just you guys in this program. But in normal poster board presentations, you'll have so many poster boards, and people are going to be picking and choosing which ones pique their interests. And they'll usually stay for 2 to 5 minutes. If they're really interested, maybe even 10 minutes. And so that said, there's a lot of emphasis on the accessibility and overall design of your poster board. So an accepted rule is that your color palette should be no more than 3 to 5 colors. You don't want to make it have too much activity going on. You want to keep that white space. There's a 6 feet rule, which is that all of your writing and posters or figures should be able to be viewed from 6 feet away. So you want to make sure that it's large. You want to avoid decorative fonts. So most people will go for titles and headings in Arial, and then their descriptions in Times New Roman. You can pick just one font, or split it how I have it here, where you have a different one for your titles and headings, and then one for your descriptions, but don't go crazy with fonts. Don't make each section its own font, or using Comic Sans or scripts. For fonts, you want ones that are easily read. So same goes for graphs. You want to make sure that your title summarizes exactly what you're looking for. Your X and Y axes should always be labeled. Images should be high resolution. I say this because pulling photos off of Google will typically be in low resolution. So you want to avoid that as much as you can, because it'll print really bad and it'll just be a blurry picture printed. So when you do your graphs, it should be saved in high resolution and not screenshotted and printed. Again, this is just another sort of layout thing. A few things to mention here. You always want to picture these like imaginary, I guess, lines that exist. So your poster will typically be 3 columns, and you really want that white space in between each section, and even between the poster board and the end of it. So, you maybe want to keep like a 1-inch outline on the outside of your poster, and then have blank spaces that basically distinguish the abstract from the introduction, or the abstract from methodology. We'll be giving you a layout, and so we'll be helping you with that. So I don't think you have to worry too much. And you won't unfortunately have much creative freedom in terms of where your things get placed, because we'll sort of set that up for you, but that's just things to keep in mind in general. Next, Haja will talk about presenting.
Yes, so now that you guys know more about how to create your poster, you want to know what the best way of conveying what's on your poster to your audience through public speaking. So when you're presenting, there are general rules that you should keep in mind. We could start with the don'ts, and then we'll move on to do. So when you are presenting, do not just read off the poster. It might seem like you don't really know what you're talking about, and so you're going to refer to this paper, and it doesn't look like you would be engaged with your audience. The poster is just a visual aid. It can help you along the way, but it's good to have your own script ready to discuss what you did. So in the do section, we have be prepared. You should know what you're talking about before you enter any conference, symposium, presentation. The second don't I have is don't put everything on the poster. Like Salma and I have said before, only the most relevant information is needed. If you want to mention something that's maybe off topic or unrelated, but you think it's still important, you can have some handouts, or you can put some more information on like a QR code for your audience to maybe look more into on their own time. But just remember that the poster has limited space, and you want to make sure you're taking advantage of it as much as you can. So in the do section, we have create handouts. Exactly what I said before. If you want to give your audience some more detail on something, it's also nice that they're, a little more engaged with what you're talking about. They have something physical that they can look at as well. The third don't I have is don't make things up. It may seem like something that you can get away with if, someone in the audience asks you a tough question and you want to sound like you've known what you were doing in that specific topic. But you don't want to do this, because not only is it not credible to you, it's not, I guess, honest. It's okay to say that you don't know the answer to it because that wasn't a focus of yours and that you did not come across it during your research. And third do is dress well. So you're gonna be in a nice conference, symposium area. Your faculty mentors are gonna be there. And so you want to dress well. You want to be taken seriously when you present. And so be sure to dress business casual, have a little button up or a nice pair of slacks, be taken seriously in a professional environment. All right, so now let's look at some examples. We'll have good examples and bad examples, and be sure to take some time to really pause, think about why these posters are the way they are. Why are they laid out badly? What makes the good example the good example? And hopefully these can help you in making your own posters. All right, so we have this first example here. First thing that we can notice is a lot of text, and first words that come to me are the title, these long, complicated words, tamoxifen, anti-estrogen therapy. Okay, I do see that there's, separate sections. There's an abstract, there's, introductions, results, but it could be better. It's a lot of black and white. There is blue, but they could definitely have taken advantage of using a little bit more color, at least in some graphs, things like that. Another thing that I can see is there's a lot of cramming on the third column. At the bottom, you see acknowledgements is all the way at the lower left, and conclusions. And then you got this middle column with just a lot of text, not really much organization. So on the next slide, there's gonna be some more examples for you to kind of see. Also, images on the top. You can have a logo of the organization, like a university or institution, but you don't need like other pretty pictures of the place or of you. It's not very necessary.
Were you done, Hajar?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I accidentally moved to the next one. So here's another example of a poster. So it looks at a directly, I can't speak. Bisphenol A directly attenuates GnRH neuronal activity. And so I think this one looks a lot better. So when we want to think about this, I would say the title stands out. I do not personally like the photo as a background. I think one thing that I forgot to say is you should really stick to having a white background. And if you do, for whatever reason, really feel the need for a colored background, it should be a solid color. I think what the idea here for this photo was probably a photo taken in the lab, but I would have maybe just opted to put this on somewhere in the poster, but not as the entire background. I think it sort of distracts the way that the writing looks. I do like how the different sections are blocked off. I think this one does a lot better of a job utilizing color and graphs. And it's really not that much writing on it. So I think this is a better look in terms of writing and accessibility. I'm not a fan of the gradient that they have going on here with the blue and white. I don't think you should. If you have any background colors, should stay solid, because this I think is a little distracting and you want the focus to be on your words. I also feel like they could have made their titles for each section a little bit bigger. But overall, this is a lot more improved and I think would attract more audience than the previous poster. Now this one is that poster but fixed. So I probably should have put them side to side, but if we see they've switched out the background to a white background, this looks a lot clearer already. Their title heading is a lot more like visible because it's on this blue background. And they've cut down some of the words. So if you see in the intro section, they kind of turn this into bullet points, which I think is good because the section was definitely more crowded. They got rid of some of these unnecessary figures and just cleaned it up a bit. I don't see too much that they switched between the previous ones, but I don't think much was needed. And I do like that they, used red for some of their percentage and results. So this would be a cleaner version of the previous poster, and I think this is a good one to go. I would still have not used gradient backgrounds, but that might just be a stylistic choice. And so this is kind of what another like good poster board looks like, and we'll send you all sort of a link to other poster boards that were considered good, and you can kind of get a sense of how these look, because there is a lot that you can do with these posters. But yeah, that's the end of our presentation. Here are the references. Again, we'll send you some of them. But yeah, so just shoot us an email if you have any questions. Hajra, did you have anything to add on before we wrapped up?
No, just remember that it's okay if you guys are lost in the process. We know that you're, just being exposed to research as high school students. And if you do have questions about, what should I put on my poster? What should the layout of it look like? Obviously, come to us, come to your peer mentor. We're here for you. And we would like for you guys to start thinking about your poster, at least the layout wise and things like that by like the first week of August. So please think about that as you continue your research, and we will see you at our next workshop. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.